Hi everyone, welcome back to another For Those Who Code video. This channel is where we learn and share skills about design and development. If you want to grow your skills and learn new things that's coming up, please like, share and subscribe for more. In this video, we'll be deploying a production-ready website building right from scratch using HTML, CSS, JavaScript along with Netlify forms. Let's quickly take a look on things we will learn and implement in this video. First of all, we'll be using semantic HTML, which means we'll make the use of HTML tags in the right places necessary, which makes our markup both human and machine readable structure. We'll also make the use of SCSS, which is a CSS preprocessor, which helps us to write CSS in an efficient way by the use of mixins, variables, nesting, and many more. And definitely, we'll be implementing great CSS features of all times like Flexbox and CSS grids. And without any question, we'll be also building a responsive website in the end, which fits in all digital devices. We shortly call this as RWD, Responsive Web Design. And one plus point is we'll make the use of Netlify serverless form function feature that Netlify provides us for free. Please do not get scared of this term as this is dead simple to implement. This doesn't even require JavaScript at all. So before we start to build a portfolio website, we need some design that we can code along with. For that one, I will look into some relevant design files which can fit in for our example right in. I personally prefer Sketch, Figma, or even Framer design resources. Let's first search for it. For now, we'll be just going with this particular resource that I recently found, which is Portfolio Landing Page Sketch resource, and which seems to be free. And obviously, the design credit goes to Danish, who is a designer for this particular designs. We'll be making this totally responsive and with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's go ahead and first download it. I've just opened the design files inside of SketchUp, and looking at the design files, let's try to go with how we can make it and code it responsive and other things in mind. First of all, we have colors and fonts, and obviously credit goes to the author. And for the font, they have used Nonito, so we have a lack of contrast over there because of the background. But for the colors, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors, which is really great. And you need the font, which is a Google font, and we'll be obviously making the use of Google font. And for some parts here, we can use the Flexbox property to like space between the elements right here. And for this portion right here, we'll be obviously using grids for this one. And this one can be achieved with grids as well, and also we'll be using grids for that one. And for the background right here, the things need to be noticed is for the desktop version we have 4 lines in the background, I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 lines. And in the mobile we have just 3 lines. So probably we'll be just like overlapping stuffs and just trying to replicate a few number of lines like 3 or 4 inside mobile, and we will just delete as we go along. So definitely contact form will be powered by Netlify forms. So we'll be implementing the quick ways that Netlify provide us for submitting static generated forms, so which is great feature of Netlify. So and it's dead simple to use. So first of all, let's go ahead by creating a project. To start a new project, let's first start our terminal. I'm using iTerm as my terminal, and inside here let's go to desktop, and inside desktop we want to create a new directory and call it deploy portfolio site, and go to that particular folder right there and then open it into Visual Studio Code. Now let's maximize this one. I think we can minimize it because we need to switch over to the web app and also this particular text editor that we are trying to look on. So let's first create our index.html right here, and we want to make the use of HTML5 snippet, I suppose, and call it a deploy portfolio app, and then probably save it. And let's go ahead and add more folders and files here. Let's create a file for assets, and inside here we'll just paste in our assets that I grabbed from the sketch file right here. Let's paste it. So it's okay. So also I want to introduce you to a sketch feature which we can probably use and leverage our efficiency. And inside here I have brought in sketch inspector, so we can inspect files, sketch files inside of this inspector, and we'll be also be using this particular inspector to inspect all the necessary pixels here and there. And let's go ahead and add more files and folders here. So another folder that I want to add is JS, and inside here we can create a main.js file where we can just console log that this is working now, and let's save it. And then we also want to bring on our style set, right? So we want to call style set, and inside here we want to create a new file and call it main.scss, where we will import all the styles from other external SCSS files that we create. And also we'll be making the use of extension to compile our SCSS to CSS. So that extension we will definitely discuss about. Before that one, let's create all the SCSS files that we need in order to create this project. Now let's import all of these files that we created inside of our main.scss. After importing all the SCSS files inside of main, let's go to our globals.scss, and we want to add in some CSS resets first of all. So let's grab in some CSS resets, that's handy for us. And also we want to paste in some um, body styles that can be really helpful for us. So I will take in some body styles and paste it right here, and let's save it for now. And inside of our design, if you can see here, we obviously are using Nunito font, and we can just click on this and see the weight of the font, which is bold, and which is extra bold, and maybe bold, extra bold, and regular would be fine. So let's grab it from Google Fonts. So after grabbing the typography needed, which is Nunito, we'll just paste in the Google font API link, which is Nunito, and the width that we are using for this particular designs are 400, 600, and 700. Also, in case of needed, I imported 800. Probably it won't affect an overall performance, I guess. So let's go ahead and add some body fonts. For that one, we will add obviously Nunito as our body font. So I'll just grab it and paste it right here. So our primary font is Nunito, and then fallback font can be Helvetica, Arial, and sans serif. So let's go back to our design and see what are the first priority things that we need. Another thing that we can first set is typography and also colors. So definitely we will go through all the variables of colors and fonts. So for the typography, let's work with H1 and all the typography in case we have H1 and all H4, H5, P, and all uses font family Nunito. So let's add this right here, and then let's go and define our font sizes. Then we can come back to this and add further modification to our global SCSS file. So inside of our variables, I want to declare the variables that are needed for typography as well as colors. So I'll just grab it from the sketch files and paste it right here. So these are pretty much of the variables that we need for making our design alive. So we will be coming to variables later on, but probably these are it, so probably not. But later on we will need it for taking a reference to our variable. So let's go to our global, and inside here we will add some variation to our font. As per the design, the H1 font, which is assumed to be this one right here, which is size of 48. So generally we have this 48 pixels. So we will be using REMs for our unit because it's more suggested and recommended rather than using pixels. So let's define our H1, H3, and some anchors. And definitely I think we can assume this as H3. So I will just define H1, H3, and maybe this can be just a small font size of 12, and this can be a small font of 12. This is also 12, and this is around 16, which is a standard paragraph font. And let's zoom it so that you guys can see it. This is 28. So as per our inspection, we'll define the fonts that's needed. So let's go ahead, and probably we already have defined it inside of variables, which is these fonts. So we'll be using these variables obviously. So inside of our globals, let's add other pretty much styles that we need. So we have added some additional styles inside of our globals, which is H1, H3, and anchor and buttons. So basically we can also define font size for our anchors, but we will rather define it inside of the classes itself. If we in case need two different anchors and two different font sizes, and obviously for the buttons. So these are pretty much it for the globals, and definitely will come after the globals. Let's first start with our nav bar, I guess, or maybe inside globals. Let's start with these lines. I would say, because these lines stretches from top to the bottom, these background lines, as you can see here, these lines. So it's let's see, we have the total container size of 1100, and inside here we have the total width of artboard is 1600 and the 1100 width. So we'll be making this particular lines. So let's start with the lines. All right, so for making the lines, we will go inside of our globals, and inside here I will want to take a reference to um, uh, my another code which I have already written. So we have lines, and we'll obviously create this div element inside of our index.html later on. So the lines are position, and they stretch from top to bottom. So top would be 0 and bottom would be 0, and height can be 100% because it stretches from top to bottom, and jet index can go negative because we don't want, sorry, it's not jet, jet index can be just 1, and width. So for the width, we are starting from the standard container, which is a 1600 container, as you can see here, and we can define 1100 pixels of width. But converting that to REMs, which we will previously discuss as it's better than using pixels. So we'll be just sticking with REMs. 68 point around 75 REM would be the width for now, which is the normal screen. And definitely we want margin 0 auto to align it to the center, and then, sorry, not auto, and then we also need to be display as flex. Oops, it's a column. and then we can add align items to stretch, because we want to stretch each lines inside of this particular div inside of these lines. So I think I will also grab on um, watching SAS files. So let's spin up our live server. So if you haven't installed the live server, you can just go to extension and install the live server. Let's click on the live server, and as here you can see that we have successfully um, opened up the port and looking for the changes. So okay, so we will now add some styles, and then we will also compile our SCSS to CSS with the help of extension as well. So additional styles that we want to write are we want to justify content to the center, just in case that we have anything, and inside of lines we'll create a div. uh, so div can be a border of 1 pixel solid, which is that particular font hex color. So I'll grab this one and paste it right in here. We don't really want to actually use this as a variable, because it just use just once and over all the applications. So I'll just sticking with this hex code now, and just format a bit and hit save. Now let's go to the stuff where we compile our SCSS and bring on CSS. For compiling our SCSS to CSS, we are using live SAS compiler. So we can search live SAS compiler, and here it is. It's already installed in my VS Code, so I'll just close it. And after it's installed, probably you can see what SAS right here. So we will just select our main.css, and inside here we will just click what SAS and just save it. And it says error because let's see, the main.css on line 10, so we don't have anything called links. Okay, let's add another called links.scss, and let's save it. And as you can see here, we can see our CSS being compiled, and we can obviously make a reference to our this particular CSS file inside of our index. So let's add that CSS here, and we can just link it. Let's copy it as relative path and paste it right in here. So that's pretty much it. Let's bring this a little bit down, and let's also try to see that if it's working. Let's go to our main, or for now let's go to globals, and we can just add a background color of red just to make sure that everything is working, and it is working pretty much fine. So let's remove this, and let's start with our index.html. So inside here we got to do now is bring in the div that we created inside of our globals, which is that lines in the background, where you can see here in the background we have the lines, and we will make that div inside of our body right here. And also obviously we need to import the scripts as well. So inside here we will add in some script. Oh, the image doesn't work. Anyway, uh, just grab some scripts that we can import from our JS, main.js, and just to make sure that everything is working fine. All right, so we have this is working, which is great. So let's go ahead and create a div, and we will call this one wrapper, and everything that we have inside of our website will go inside here. So which is everything basically inside of container, and we can now go to outside of this div and create another div which can be called lines. Or first let's add a container, and inside here we can have a div and call it lines, and inside there we can have divs where we can have 1, 2, 3, and 4, I guess. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divs. Let's add 5 divs, and let's also call this one lines background right here, and we want to just comment it out, and definitely if anything's that's needed, maybe probably next time if we need any kind of menu overlay, we can add a menu overlay down here. So we will come after menu overlay later on. So inside of our wrapper, let's start making sections. And first, let's start with header. And inside header, we have something called nav, right? And inside nav, we have UL and allies. And we can add 3 divs inside of nav because we'll be making the use of flexbox to align it space between. So we can grab this particular UL and add it inside of this particular div and add some links right here. So let's take a look at our design right here, where we have works, about, links, and contacts. And let's add works, and this one is about, and the last div will have links and contacts. And inside here, let's add an image where we will grab from our assets, which would be person.jpg. Let's copy actually relative path and paste it right here, and we can call this one person avatar. And let's save this one. Let's format a bit, and let's see it inside of the browser. And as you can see, the image is loading and we have that links right here. So before we go with that links, let's delete this, and let's delete this wrapper, and let's see whether the lines are properly seen or not. We don't, I personally don't see any lines. Let's try to fix it. Why? It seems like I did some mistake over here. It should be stretch, and then this should be space between, because the line should have space in between, so it doesn't appear in center. For that one, we can just add some centering to this one. This looks pretty much fine to me now. Let's go ahead and refresh it. It's all auto reload, but anyway, let's try to delete the header. And as we can see here, we do have lines in our background, and we do have equal sizes in our right and left, which is great and which looks amazing. Oops, I just took a screenshot. Anyway, I was using it just to measure the pixels, but it looks like we have pretty much our lines ready in the background. Let's add our first header navigation right here inside, which is inside of header. Let's go to our index.html, and inside here we will make some tweaks inside of our wrapper right here. Let's add a comment, which is the header section, and then inside of our header, let's also try to give it a class. Let's call this one header, but we could have called it a different name, as header is a semantic HTML kind of as you can see here, elements represents content for, it's like HTML5 elements, but anyway, we'll just ignore it for now. Let's also add a class for our navbar and call it navbar and container. And I suppose we do have a container class inside of our main.js, or probably around global. And inside of here, we will add a class of navbar underscore left, so that it's inside of navbar, and which is the element block, and this is the element. And if we have navbar red, and this can be, or just this much, this can be a modifier. So this is just PM convention that I'm trying to work with. So we have this navbar left, and inside here we do have this. So also we need to wrap this inside of anchors probably, because it does need to be clicked later on. So we will just add works here, and also probably add anchor here, and about should be inside of this anchor here. So navbar left looks fine. So let's go to this div, which we can call this navbar center. Let's copy this and let's add center. This is so that we can identify it's inside of navbar, and this is left devs, this is center dev, and later on we have this one, which is, oops, I do have class copied over there, so which is right. And we have links like links and contact. I think this should be inside of anchors, so let's use links and let's use contacts there, and okay, contacts, and then we don't need that there, and let's save it, and it looks pretty much right. So let's go ahead and style this inside of our navbar. I want to add more HTML elements first, and we can further hop on into styling it and responsiveness later on. And ultimately at the last we will be using Netlify form, easiest way to handle static forms. And for now we will just jump in to add another section, which is code section, um, which is probably this one right here, which is motivation is the first step to success, which is a kind of a quote. So we'll call this one quote, and we will definitely have icons over here, and we already have that icons grabbed before, which is inside of our images assets. So let's dive into this section. So to code that section using just markup, I will just add a quote section, and then this is comments, and then we can create a new section and call it quote, and inside here we will have a div of class container, and inside that div we will have another div of class quote text. Okay, so inside quote text we will have an h1 where we can grab this right here, which is the content, and paste it right inside of our h1 right there. And after like quote text we can have another div just after quote text and call it or I guess we can just have inside here a UL can just go inside here, and we will have a bunch of LIs, and we will have anchor with here of hash, and then here we can add in the image, and for the source I want to grab in what comes first: Twitter, Behance, and Instagram. So let's grab in Twitter, copy relative path and paste it right here and call it Twitter icon. And let's copy this li and paste it 2 times because we have 3 icons there, and the next one would be Behance and the other one would be Instagram. Okay, and let's also rename this one, and save it. And let's take a look at what we have here. We do have 3 icons, but we will add stylings, sorry, but we will add stylings later on. So we will just focus on the markup for now. And we have the code text, which is fine, and we have 3 icons inside of li, which is great. So pretty much we are done with this section. Let's go with another section. And for the another section, we have the works, right, which is this particular works right here, which is slanting, maybe rotated minus 90, around 90 degrees. And we have a grid layout right here. So let's go with our work section. We'll add a section of class work inside work section here, and we'll also definitely have to wrap our div inside of container. So we will have this container div, and inside here we can give another wrapping div and call it works container, or probably works grid. And inside of our grid right here, we can have heading, which is this one, and this which we can call it grid 1, grid 2, grid 3, and grid 4, and divide the grid into 1, 2, 3, 4 different divs. So inside of our works grid right here, we need another div of class works heading, and we can add the heading of works, and definitely we'll have another div and call it a class of work grid 1, or let's say we can call it works grid 1, and then we can replicate it later on, maybe, because a lot of things would be pretty much similar. So inside work grid 1, what do we have? So we have image, and we have a little bit padding to our left and right, which is 60, and we will calculate it to REMs. And we have this, which can be like h3, which we have predefined in our global SCSS, and we have a span tag here, which can be just this yellowish right here, and then down here we just have s3, and right here we have s3, and in our works grid fourth card we have these span tags, and then h3 with the image, and bit of overlay div that we need, probably the overlay just before this particular image. So we'll also take that into consideration in making this. We'll just add image, and the source for now would be, I guess it would be work image 1, copy related path, and we can call it ocean image. And then we can have another class of class name grid overlay, and inside here we can add other divs where we can have a span, which is featured, which is this right here, which is the yellowish in background, and it's featured. And down just below that one we have a heading, and let's copy the heading to the inspector and paste it right in here. So we are probably good for our grid 1. Let's add grid 2. Let's add image 2 here, and probably we don't need a span tag there. We always need the grid. Let's grab I think grid 2 is this one, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I'm not mistaken, this is Benjamin is grid 2. Okay, so we have to add another 2, which is 3, which is image of 3, and then probably we need is we don't need a span there, but let's grab it. Let's grab the contents inside it. Let's paste it inside of here, and inside of our fourth, just call it 4. Instead of our 4, let's call it 4, and we also need as a span tag inside of 4. And let's add a content, grab it from our sketch inspector there, and paste it right in here. Let's save it, and let's take a look. What do we have? I think we are pretty much okay. So let's format a bit. I could probably use format on save, but it's kind of like difficult in a situation where we have those kind of situation. So I just disable that for now, and our somehow work section looks fine. And let's also add a markup for our other section, which is probably about this one, but this one is pretty much simpler. So we just have 1 2 3 4, and this can be just flexbox or grids. We'll just make the use of grids in this, and maybe probably use flexbox to for these logos, because this is just one directional and the cross axis and the x axis right here. So yeah, so let's add another div or another section where we can work with about section. Oops, I was pressing the wrong key right there. And for the about section, let's plan it out first. So So for the about section, probably we always need section tag. Instead of it, we need a container, and we can probably add another div just to wrap everything around inside of container, and a class for this heading we see here, which is about. And definitely we need an individual div for wrapping these elements, like heading. Probably it's h3, because these two share the same font size, I suppose. Yeah, and this should be the same, which is probably defined h3 instead of globals now. And this is probably 16, which is a general paragraph font. So we'll have 1 2 3 4 divs right here wrapped into grid container, and we'll add this separate, probably just adding flex and margin to our right on each of these image. So that's what we will be planning for this section. So let's go and add this one. So inside of our section right here, which is work, probably I missed a section tag before, so I just fixed it. And we need another section which is about, and this can be just commented out, and just make a section tag with a class name of about. And inside here we can add a div of class container, and inside there we can have another div which we can call it about grid. and inside of our about grid, we will just have another div of class about heading, and this is probably a class name, so just add a class in front of it and grab this particular heading that we see, which is about, from our contents from our inspector, and paste it right in there. And below our heading we can have another div of class about grade 1, probably it's the first grade, and we need is a heading and then a paragraph. I'll just grab this paragraph in advance and write, oh sorry, I'm in the wrong place. So this adds 3, and then UI UX, and then probably have a paragraph and paste it right in there, format a bit, and then we can have another div of 2 and 3 and then 4. We have 4 grids right here, which is 1, 2, 3, and this 4. Okay, now let's change the name to 3 and then this one 4, and we'll also grab the contents for this one. After pretty much content that has been added inside of our about section, we also need is these logos right here. For that one, we will just come out of these grid divs for now, which is this div, and inside of here I will create another div and call it a class of about logo and a UL inside of it and an li with an image, and then image source can be I guess it's Google at the first, so let's copy reality path and paste it right here and call this one Google logo, and let's copy this particular list and paste it 3 times because we have 3 logos right there. And second one is Airbnb, and we'll call this one Airbnb logo, and we will have another logo at the last, which is dropbox.svg, which is Dropbox logo. All right, so I think we are pretty much done with our about section. I think these markup would be rather enough for us to select the DOM elements, like DOM selection through CSS. Obviously it's enough for JavaScript, but for CSS I think we can be okay with these right now. So now let's move to another section, which is the links right here. Okay, to plan out the links, we definitely can achieve it via Flexbox or grids, but for now we'll just go with grids. We'll add this link, which is probably an absolute element, later turns into relative, because in mobile we have this in the top right here, and we will also deal with that one later on. And for this one we can make the grid wrapper, but inside here we can have flex elements, 2 flex childs and space between the flex childs, and probably 14 space in case of space that's needed in between them. So yeah, that's it. Let's dive into our new section, which is links. For that one, let's add links section right here, and then inside of link section we will definitely call this section class of links. Inside of our links we can create a container class so that we have everything inside container, and inside of container we can add another class which we can call it share. Oh, let's call it share right up here. So we have share links. Oops, share links grid. All right. So inside of share links, share link grid, we can define. I mean, we can call. We can just add a div, call it a share links heading, and we will just add links here, which is this heading right here, and we will add further classes down here, which is share links grid left. So in the left section, I will just create an empty wrapper div in case of necessary. We will have an anchor, and that anchor can be clicked, and then this is the date. So we'll have that anchor, and then this can be copied from here. Let's place it inside of this anchor, and we also have a span tag, and later on we can call this one a flex parent, so that the child will be a flex child later on. So this can be 218 for now, and let's add a couple of divs that needed. I think 1, 2, 3, 4 divs are needed. 2, 3, 4, and also copy this one, and on our here we can call this right, and on our right we have 1, 2, 3, just 3, 1, 2, 3, and then yeah. Okay, let's save this one, and I think probably we are also pretty much done with our share links section. So let me quickly hop into the reference code that I have. Yeah, probably we have finished our share link section markup as well. So let's hop into our another section, which is probably contacts. And for the contacts, definitely we will be planning, and the contacts will can also use grid container, and these can be divided into percentage later on, or FR units, or anything later on, but it will be wrapped in a grid container, and also a container for our elements, max width container. And then we'll have this div of heading, paragraphs, and ULLIs inside of these images. And on our right here we have form, and later we will just change this and tweak a little bit and change it to Netlify form, so that we can submit these data to and I mean these data we can hand it over to Netlify functions. So we have name, email, and message, and on our here right we have a button. Okay, probably this can be grid right, and with these as flexbox, but definitely we will plan that out. And then inside of our contacts right here, let's create a section and call it class of contacts, and inside here let's also call, let's also add a container, and add another div with contact grid, and inside there we have another div with contact grid left, and in the contact grid left we have these h3, I suppose it's 28, so it's h3, and it's paragraph, h3 paragraph, and ul li with images. Okay, h3 contacts, and then paragraph positive, I forgot. Okay, let's copy it from here. Positive, pleasure-oriented goals, blah blah blah. All right. So, and we also need as UL. Inside there, we can have an anchor, and we will have a empty thing there, and bring in the image, which is probably the same that we have in the first fold up in our design that we did, which is Twitter. Let's copy this, copy relative path and paste it right here, Twitter, or we can just grab it from here if we are too lazy enough to type in. So, and then let's paste it right in here. Okay, that's good. So we have our contact grid left. Now let's bring on pass contact grid right, and in the right we have a form, or let's wrap that form in a div form, and action of the form is post, and later on we'll be tweaking this particular form with some attributes that helps us to blend in with the Netlify serverless function behind the scene that's provided free from Netlify. So we don't have to write a single line of code. It's just adding data attributes, or in a sense HTML attributes inside these tags right here. So we'll come after this later on, and we will just add label, which is for name, and call it name because we have the field of name. And I also want to add the input and call it placeholder, would be incognito, and then email, and then message text area. Okay, I'll add these here, and I've pretty much added anything that's needed, which is required, which is HTML5 validation, and also added class and ID, name, email, and text area, which is description. So ultimately we want to add a button, so a button, and this type would be submit, and then we can call this one submit contact. Okay, and save that. And one tricky thing that I want to talk about is as you can we know that this particular button should be inside of this particular form tag. So the way that this particular form is designed is, if we have a button inside a form tag, we could have handled it, but I will just add one button right here which is hidden in default, and one button right here. So after clicking on this button, we will programmatically invoke a click function to that particular hidden button right here. So if you get what I mean, we will have this a button right here which is invisible because we need a button inside of this form tag, right? So I will just tweak a little bit and add a button outside a form tag so that we can place a button right here, and after clicking this one, we'll click on the button that's hidden inside the form tag right here, so that everything would be fine. After that one, I will also add some button that's needed for here, which is this one. So we are pretty much okay with our contact section right here, and I have also added a button and call it ID of call submission, so that later on we can target this particular ID of button and listen to some click events. So we are pretty much okay. Let's move on to another section, which is the last section. And as you can see here in the markup that we just wrote, we have name field, email field, and message field, and a submit contact button which will be initially hidden, and this icon right here which resembles to this icon right here. And if we click on this particular icon, we programmatically click on this icon which will be hidden. So it's kind of like tweaked in a sense. So I'm trying to explain this again and again. Let's add another last section. So I would like to bring on the footer. So probably we don't have anything much in footer. It's just this copyright and invoicing and documents. So I'll just grab some code and paste it right in here. which is our footer. So yeah, I think we are pretty much done with our markup. The way we have organized is we try to use BM, block, element, and modifier, but we pretty much haven't used much of modifier yet, but it would be uh, really handy in a sense where you need to modify the existing um, element. So I think we are pretty much done with our markup. Let's move ahead and start our stuff with this navbar.scss. So before moving that, I guess we do have typography all set. Let me check it inside of our globals, and we have our lines and everything looks fine. Let's go with our navbar.scss. For the navbar, we have this particular div wrapped in a div works and about are wrapped, and this image is wrapped in a div, and links and contact is wrapped in a div. So which is pretty much fine. So let's add, before we add a single line of code inside of our navbar, let's go into our index and let's bring on navbar. Let's collapse everything that's not needed for now. Collapse. Okay, so we have our navbar. So, and inside of navbar we will call this a flex parent. So display of flex, and then justify content to space between, so that we can create spaces between each of these flex child elements. So justify content space between. Padding top is also needed, which is probably around 6.25 rem, so which is 100 pixels, which converted to 6.25 rems. So I'm converting a pixel to rem behind the scene. So let's add and format a bit, and let's see. And we have everything in place, which is like space in between. So let's add further styles. To add additional styles, we can make the use of SCSS features. Like if we just have add and then underscore underscore and left, this would result to something like navbar on the front part here, something like this. So this comes really handy right here. So inside of our left, which is this one, which is this one highlighted, we are looking at the navbar left. So that's why it helps in, like, we are inside the navbar left section, right? So it helps during the CSS writing styles that we are naming it quite in a BM convention. So yeah, and inside of our left we have the UL, and we want to display it to flex as well. So if we save it, and we see here we have the flex, but we don't have flex there. And let's copy this one and also repeat the same to our right. Just basically we are just repeating code, but it's not pretty much recommended to repeat code, but we are doing it for just one line. Inside of our UL we have an li and a. Now let's add some a bit spaces, and let's also try to replicate this typography that we have, which is the primary color, and the size is 12, and weight is extra bold, which is 800, and the typeface is obviously Nonito, and it's contact us, and we have around 70 right here and 70 right here. So let's work on that one. So we have li and a, and this is a nesting feature of SAS, and which is really great. And trace transform is uppercase, and then we have padding on our right element. So we have padding right of about 4.375 rem, and then data spacing can be grabbed from here, which is 3 pixels, which results to 0.18 rem. And then let's save this and if we take a look at here, we have something in place. Now let's work on the span tags that we have. Now let's also add some styles for these images right here, which is center, inside center, right, and then we need one for center here, right, and then center, and then inside of center we have, so let's add image, and the image width would be 52 and 52, which results to width of 1.87 rem and height also 1.87 rem. And then we can now move to the right section, and on our right we have display flex, and we do have li of a on our right as well, and definitely we want to like grab these, and it's not right but it's left, I suppose. And let's also add a bit of styles to font, which is looking great, but why isn't this image taking the width? Navbar center. All right, navbar center. Looks like we have a mistake right here, which should be dash rather than a double dash. Let's add UL, LI, and A first, which should be the font size of the same right here, which is 12, and the width would be 800, but I guess it's not really 800. But anyway, and the color is our blue, and obviously the letter spacing is 3. Okay, so a font size of font weight, font color, and also letter spacing, which should be 0.18 rem. And let's save it. I think we have an error here which shows it's an error. Oops. Let me check. I think we haven't really added navbar, mixins globals, navbar. Yeah, I think we are pretty much fine with our navbar right here, which looks kind of resembles the same of this particular screen size. And yeah, let's move on to our code section right here. So we can just keep the responsiveness of this part navbar in the later, and we will come for responsive later for the navbar. And for our codes, let's add some bit of styles to our codes. Let's also open our index.html on our right. We will collapse header and look into codes. All right, for the codes, we can write codes or add a section here, but let's add just codes. And codes is of like, we have a margin top of 120, which results to 7.37 rem, a margin top of 7.37 rem, and then we can navigate to text. So just copy this one and add and percent, and then this one, which results to quote underscore text. So and this can be with a 550, and then there is a success inside of span, so we'll select that as well. So text should be max width of 34 point around 375, and text is aligned center, and margin 0 auto to align it center once again, and text transform could be capitalized uppercase. Okay, let's check it. I think we don't have anything called quotes inside of our styles, so let's check why is that. We inside of our main we do have a code. Let's try to save it. I think it's just code, sorry for my mistake. Yeah, it's just code, and it's not totally it's capitalized, not uppercase, because first letter needs to be capitalized. So with uppercase we have all letter capitalized, and then inside here we have H1, and the H1 is around the font weight of and we do have a span which is need to be that color, so we will grab span, and the span of success is color of template blue. It's a variable that we defined in variables. So inside of our variables we can see here we have template blue right here, so that's coming from there. And we now need is a UI element, which is this right here. So UI element is these elements right here, which is inside of our list, inside of anchor, inside of image. Okay, and for the UI elements we can like display inline flex actually, so that it lines up to the horizontal line, and then we can have a margin at top of around 50, which results to 3.125 rem. And then now let's select ULLI, and for the ULLI we can have a margin right of 30, margin right 30 pixels converts to rem to 1.87 rem. Okay, so let's save this one. Let's take a look at the browser, and it's looking great. Now let's move ahead to working with our work section right here. So we'll be dealing with grids inside here. So we have the works, which can be just absolute element, and this container can be just be relative, and we'll be making the use of grids for layouting this one. So inside of works we can just expand just works now. Okay, works. The works have first of all margin top of 121 pixels. This is 120, so we can call it 120 pixels. So margin top of 7.5 rem, and inside here we have this works grid, right? So we will just grab and grid and display this to grid. And then now the tricky part is like displaying it to grid. We will just have two columns, right? This is just two columns, and we'll distribute to one fraction unit for each of the column. And for the template rows we can like divide 30% to this one and auto to this one, and 30% to this one and auto to this one. And also we want a gap of 60 pixels in the column and also in the row, and also grid template areas needs to be written as per this. Okay, so I just also want to share you another resource, which is grid generator, which is really great in a case where you want to just add grids. So basically you can delete a column. So in case of this particular right here, we can also use this from the generator. So we have two columns and two rows. Okay, we have two columns and one, two. Okay, this can be just one, right? And this is not one. This can be one, which is save. This can be two, and then this can be three or four, and sorry, this can be four and save it. This can be four. Okay, yeah, this is how I generated this particular grid as well. So you can see here the code has been executed in a sense where the code has been generated, and you can copy the code from here. And let's move on to our design here, and we have a display of grid, and we do want to have some columns, grid template columns, and we can have one FR and one FR. So it's just a fraction unit that grid provides us with. So and we will have grid template rows, which as talked would be 30% auto and 30%. Basically this would suffice for now, and obviously we do have a gap in between. As we measured before, we have a gap of 60 in all sides, so gap of 3.75 REMs, which is equivalent to 60 pixels, 3.75 REMs. And then for the grid template areas, it's kind of tricky. I will grab in and paste in here some snippet. So it's basically saying we have grid 1 here, and grid 2 here, and grid 2 here, right? And grid 3 here, grid 3 here, and grid 4 here, right? It's basically doing the same that we just generated here, which is 1, 1, 4, 2, 5, 5. This is 1, and 2 template rows. 1 covers 2 template rows, 2 covers just 1 template row. That's why we just added 2 here, and 4, 5, 5. So 5, 5, and then 4. I hope you got the why we have written like this. So it's 1, 1, so it's 1, 1, and then 2, 4, 5, 5, right? So if you are still confused, you can just play around and play around just by naming this one. So these 2 can be selected and call it 2. Then we can see here 2, 2. So you can play around with it. And for now, we'll add another property, which is grid gap, which would be 7.75 REMs. And then position can be relative, and just format it, save it, and let's see what do we have here. Okay, looks fine, but we still haven't achieved the thing that we wanted to. Let's add a few of the styles here. Now let's take a look at the browser. What do we have here? So we do have a grid container to works grid, but it looks like work heading is also counted as a grid child. So actually this should be a position absolute element right here, which is works. So let's fix this. For our heading, which is works heading, so it would be n% underscore underscore heading, and inside here we can add a position of absolute because it is an absolute element, and we have let's see, we have around 60 pixels from our left, and we'll also align something from the top, and the font size is 12. So, and we will also add the colors and rotate bit as well. So for absolute, and after that we have lift of around -7 REMs.
1.2 REM from the top. Let's save it. Oh, it's a pretty random mistake. It should be a curly braces. What?
Okay, let's save it, and then let's also add some further styles to this one. And we know that our font sizes of you know font of extra small would be fine here. So color of the font would be around template gray, and text transform is uppercase. And let's save it and let's see what do we have here. We have the works on our right, which is great, but it's much not pretty aligned. First, let's try to rotate it in vertical axis right here. What do we see? So for that one, I will just add a translate and add some 90-degree of negative translation. I mean transform translate. Any uh, and we also need is bit of letter spacing, which can be 0.18 rem, and let's save it and let's see what do we have. It looks fine, but I still wonder why is this not working. Absolute left. Okay, errors. We have an error in the compiler. It looks like we don't have any variable which is template gray, and it should be a pretty much of kind of camel case for now. And let's save it and let's see it in the browser, and it's pretty much looking great. Just one thing that we need to do is we need to add this portion absolute, which is grid overlay. uh, Actually, grid overlay is the overlay, and then absolute element is also the grid overlay, and also inside of grid overlay this div as well. So for that one, we will add the grid overlay CSS, and yeah, so let's go to grids and images, and first we can just add these h3, which is just this span and h3. Inside of our grid, we want our image to be positioned relative, so that we can have these and absolute, these two things. So and obviously the height needs to be 100%, and object fit should be cover in case of we want the image to fit proportionally in the 100%. So we are achieving somewhat kind of thing here, but let's add on some styles so that it would be great. So we will add a bit of filter and bit of grayscale of 1, and let's save it. And also for the h3, we have our font weight would be 700, and maybe a margin top of 20, and the padding right here inside this overlay div would be 60 pixels. Okay, so font width for this one is 500, margin top of 1.25 rem. Now inside here we have the grid overlay, and the grid overlay can we'll just add a local mixin for this grid overlay, and I will just call it mixin and call that mixin absolute element, and so that we can reuse this particular thing inside of our works.scss. Position is absolute and left is 0 rem, and grid overlay is generally the overlay which makes the image a little bit grayscale, so that our image will be overlaid by this div. So we're kind of trying to achieve that. So right would be 0 rems, and then flex direction would be column, because everything we have inside here is just columns. And then we will also align items to not center but flex start, and padding can be around 60 pixels, which is 60, which can result to 1.87 rems, and justify content flex end, and obviously display is flex. Let's write display flex on the top. And do we need else? Top would be 0 rems is 0 rem, and left and right is also 0, and background color would be, I'll just grab hex code for the overlay color, add another color of white, and let's save this one. Now we can use this particular mixin inside of our grid overlay right here. We'll add include and this absolute element, and we could have just added these styles here, but totally unnecessary for the mixing, but we will stick it for now. And we will add other further styles to this one. And inside of grip overlay, as you can see here, we have a div, which is this one. So these has our span and s3 inside it. So we will have a max width to this one because we don't want to uh, go full width right here, which does have some kind of max width. So it would be around 275 pixels. So grid width is a max width is around 19.81.81 rems. We will also add further styles to our span. So for our span right here, we will have the background color of yellow and a bit of border radius and padding of around 15 pixels, and font size is obviously 12, and font width can be around 800, but it's not exactly 800, but we'll figure that out. Okay, inside of span we have a background color of our variables, which is template yellow, and then color is dark black. Border radius can be 0.13 or 31 rems, and a bit of padding is needed, 12 rem and 0.62 rems. And we also need to define the font size, which is font access and a font weight of 600. Now let's take a look at what do we have here. The features, these are working fine, but it looks like we have some kind of overlap here. I think this image is position relative. Oh, okay. So I think we should individually add some grid 1 here, which is right here. So we can just add some grid areas and position to this elements, because it's not totally what we want to, so we are missing out the grid areas. So we will just add grid area and call this the same that we called right here, which is work grid area 1, and then this is position relative. I think that does work. Let's copy it for 2, 3, 4, as we have 4 grids right there, 2, 3 and 4, and then we have 2 here. These are the names for our grids. We need to specify this particular name, which resembles to this thing right here, which is grid template areas. So I think this would be pretty much fine. Let's save it. I wonder why this is not perfectly working. Okay, let's take a look at the browser, and we do achieve the same layout that we saw in the inside of our cloud inspector, which is pretty much similar. So now let's quickly move ahead to about, because this video will be too long for these tasks. So inside of about, it's the same. So we'll just grab this particular style here, and this would be absolute element as we have this one, and this would be a relative. The outline, this blue outline would be relative, and this is absolute, and all of these would be grid containers. All right, so let's go to about.scss, and let's also move to about inside of our markup right here. So inside of about, we have a section of about now, and we want to style this one. A margin top of would be, I think it's 120. Yeah, it's 120, which is 7.5 rems. And then we have about section, and inside about section we have this heading, so we'll grab that as well. And then we have heading, and for the heading we will just grab in the same styles that we used in heading before. I'll just grab this one and paste it right in here. Let's go quickly through them. Position is absolute, top, and then size is fine. I think everything is fine. Yeah. Okay, now let's move on to our logo part. So for the logo part, which is right here. We also want to add a margin of top to this one because it has a margin top of 60, which is divided by 7.5 is around 3.75. 3.75. And then inside of logo we have UL, which is this tag right here. I'm also taking a reference of this markup on our right. So inside of UL we have a display of flex, and we also need to select UL li and see that we have some kind of margin on our right, which is 137. So we will not be totally exact with that one, but margin right can be around 7.5 rems for now, and we will also add some responsive fixes later on. So let's move on to our grids inside of our about, which is about grid. Okay, so inside here we can write n% and paste this one. And for the grids right here, you can also take a reference to the CSS grid generators that I shared before. So I will just add some styling, which is grid, and this is pretty much straightforward. This is just 1FR, 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 and this is just grid 1, grid 2, grid 3, grid 4. So this is quite simple grid for now. So we will just add some of the styles. Let's take some of the styles from here so that we don't need to type much, and I want to paste it right in here, and it's 1FR, and rows can be the same, which is 1FR, 1FR, and then grid gap is the same that we have in works, and this is position relative, and we have grid template areas. Okay, for the grid template areas we need to tweak a bit, and I'll just add in some code, which is grid 1, 2, 3, 4. It's pretty simple, and I think we're pretty much done with our grid part. So we have an h3 inside of our grid, which is this UI UX part. So we'll add font size of our variables defined, which is font x LG, and a font width of 500, and margin bottom of around, let's see, 30 pixels, which results to 1.87 rems, and also have a paragraph. So let's also add styles to our paragraphs, which is standard paragraph of 16, and yeah, and a bit of line height, I guess it's 30, which results to 1.87 rems. Okay, line height of the theme that we have here. And lastly, we want to grab on all the grids that we have. Lastly, we want to grab on all the grids that we have, which is grid 2, grid 3, grid 4, and grid 1. So let's also add that here. I'll just add all the grids names right here, which pretty much resembles the same to this names that we used right here. It's just defining the name of the grid. So yeah, let's save it, and let's see what do we have here in the browser. Looks like we haven't really about grid, about and grid. This is not taking an effect. Let's see why. So now it looks pretty much fine. Let's see it in the browser, and we do have our about section right here, which pretty much resembles what do we have in the mockup, right? So let's move quickly to our links section, and the link section is also quite similar, and let's hop in to links, and let's close our about section because we will come for responsiveness for our about later. And for our link section right here, let's add some styles. First section is links. It's called share link. Okay, share link, and then inside here we have a bit of margin top of 120, which results to and we do have a class of shared link inside here, and I'm also taking a reference with this markup on our right. So we have a shared link grid, so we'll use n% and this one, and inside here we pretty much um, have somewhat similar to our about. So let's grab in from our about inside of links right here, and which is display of grid, and then we have obviously template grid columns 1fr 1fr, and we just have one row and a gap, and position would be relative. Okay, looks good to me. So we do have an anchor inside of our grid, which is this one, and let's add a style to that. A color would be template blue, and let's also style some headings. It looks like we could have used some mixins for our headings because it's used a lot, but for now let's stick with what we have here, and then let's save it and let's see it in the browser. Okay, looks great. A little bit of styling fixes needed, so we have a bit of spaces in between around 60 pixels, and this can be like flex child and space between, and inside and this blue outline that we see here is a grid container, uh, which has two grid containers, one for our left and one for our right. Inside there we can have flexbox uh, property. So let's go and add some styles for our span tags that we have used, which is 2018. For our span right here, we can add a color and call it primary blue or template gray, I think, and we'll be pretty much fine with it for now. Let's also bring in our sharing grid left, which is right here. Let's copy this for now, and then serial link, and we can add a serial link grid left, and inside here we want to select the div and add a display of flex. So these divs right here becomes flex, and obviously these will be flex child automatically, and we can just have justify content and space between these elements. So okay, so let's see what do we have here in the browser. Looks like we have a bit of padding needed between the elements, so it would be like 30, right? 30 of little bit margin or padding, so let's add that as well. Now inside of our browser it looks like our link section is also pretty much okay for this particular screen size, and let's move towards contact. So for contact right here we have this particular h3 that we have defined, which is fine, and paragraphs, and basically ULLIs with anchor and images inside of it. And we'll also need to tweak a little bit for our forms right here, because we have a border of bottom and a label capitalized and placeholders, and obviously we need two buttons as we discussed before, one for this one and one hidden right here. So let's go ahead and write some code for our contact us. So inside of here I'll just add contact us, and let's also move to contact us inside our markup, and I'll just add a collapse to these so that we can see everything easily. Okay, section contacts. So for our section dot contact, the background color, as you can see here, We do have a lines here, but we don't have lines here. So what we can do here is add a background of white. So we'll just add a background color of white, and maybe a padding, because we want padding of 120 from the top, and also I guess 120 in the bottom. So we'll just add a padding top and bottom of 120 pixels, which converts to 7.5 rems. 7.5 rems to the top and bottom, and in the left and right we have 0. And border top is also needed because we have these particular lines. As you can see here, these highlighted lines are red. For this one we will add a border top of 1 pixel solid, and then we can just grab the hex code needed, and we will just paste in there. And let's move on to our contact. We'll just wrap everything with contact so that we can use ampersand and underscore inside it, and use of grid. Right inside here I will just bring on the same old grids that we have before, right in here, which is right here. So okay, we have grid of 4 columns, 1 FR each, and rows is just 1 FR, and we also have defined some template areas, and also we do have a margin bottom. Okay, let's move to our grid area on our right. So we can just add in contact grid right. I assume we can still use ampersand and all the stuff, but we can just add grid area and call this area as a name of contact underscore grid right, because this is the right section, and give it a display of ZRID. Okay, for our right, we will just add display of flex, and so that we can align this and this this way, and we'll just give a flex of 1 to our first div elements, and this can just stick on to our right easily. So for that we will add display of flex, align items to the center, and padding top can be 3.75 rems. And let's also grab our div inside of right, which is the form, right? So we want to select the first div, which consists of the form inside it. So inside of here we will just add a div with a selector of first child, and for the first child we will just give it a flex of 1, because we want to spread it in a sense of 100% width, and the margin right can be 30 pixels, which results to I think it's around 1.87 rems. And then let's also work on the buttons that we have. And for the buttons, that's inside of this particular div, so we want the background color for this button would be like this, and then a little bit of padding around 18 or 19 or 17, maybe around 17 would be fine for now, and then a border and border radius and width and height for this, which is 52. All right, we have the background color of we can use the template gray, a bit of padding, can be 1.18 rems, and a border can be 0 pixels, and also we need a border radius because it's rounded, so it would be 50%, and a width and height as we measured before, which comes around 3.25 rems for our width, and also height would be the same. So it's pretty much of square aspect ratio, and we have this, and inside here we do have sorry, it should be SVG. Inside our button we do have an SVG, which is this one, which we do have it inside of our the button right here. And let's grab that SVG and also give it a width of 1 rems and height of 1 rem, and we can also add some bit of hover effect to this one. So hover on the div button, then we can like add in some background colors, which can be template blue that we have, and also cursor can be pointer. But we could have also add our button hover to cursor pointer inside of our globals because it's globally, but it's fine for now. Let's move on to our forms now, because it's like we should work on the forms. Okay, inside of first child we do have a form, and let's select the form. Inside here we have the form, and let's add a display of flex, and flex direction would be direction would be column. And let's also take a look at, okay, so we will come after this later on, but I guess we have already worked on this part, which is ULLI anchor image. I think we haven't. Okay, let's gradually go with the form. We have a flex direction of column, which is great. It's column, and then let's also add some other properties like a label. So we want to style the label. So label can be, let's see, label can be all capitals and margin bottom of 13 and letter spacing of 1.87 and font size is 16. Okay, so we have label and margin bottom of 0.81 rem, text transform of uppercase, and letter spacing of 0.18 rem, and font weight can be 600, and also font size as we measured before, which comes around the same variable that we have, which is this one. Okay, so we are pretty much okay with the form labels. Why is this not working? Div button, I think we are inside of button, so that's why it's not working. So let's go outside of button, which is right here. Let's save it, and we don't have anything working. So I've added some height to our input and text area, and everything is probably working fine for now, because we have pretty much messed up some nesting inside of here, which should be outside of div button and inside of container grid right. So now let's take a look at what do we have here in the browser, and we have pretty much working, and we do have some kind of interaction, and we do have a bit of border when the placeholder is focused. All right, so now let's also style these part, which is our grid left, I think. Let's see. Hmm. Okay, so we have right, but we will turn it to left, and inside of our left we can define a grid area, because we need grid area in order to identify this as a, you know, grid template name. So we have this, and inside here we do have an h3, and let's collapse this one, and for this h3 right here we can just grab its margin top, I mean margin bottom of 60, and it's 28 of size, and line height of 1.071, and a color that'd be fine, I guess. Font size, font XLG, and then font width is 500, and margin bottom is 3.75 rems. And we'll also style a bit for our paragraphs, which should be margin bottom of 30 and a line height of 1.875. Okay, okay, so now let's move on to our UL inside of grid left. So for UL, we'll just align it in a display inline right here, and then we can just have a margin right of around 30 pixels. That'd be fine for now. So for the UL, we'll just add display flex for now. Hope this works. And for our UL li inside of contact grid left, we can have a margin of right of 1.87 rems. Let's save this and let's see it in the browser. Uh, this should be left, sorry. All right, looks great. Okay, so now we have pretty much finished our contact. Right now, we'll obviously come after responsive later on. Uh, about works links. How come this is coming to the bottom? Oh, got it. This should be deleted because this is for the responsive menu, and this can be just commented out. How come after this later on? I just added it because we need a responsive menu, so we'll just not use the menu that we have right now. Yeah, okay. So now let's move on to our footer. Our footer doesn't have much, so let's quickly go to footer. Yeah, everything is inside of our container, and we have this particular div, and this goes inside a div, space between, and then we have a gap of 190, which is kind of weird. It's long gap right here, but anyway, we'll try to replicate it as it is. So let's go for our footer. Okay, we have also pretty much added some styles for our footer, and I've just measured everything that's inside of a sketch inspector right here and added it. We have background, we had a padding bottom of 7.5 REMs, and a wrapper which is display of flex, and uh, and justify content space between, some font size, and everything looks fine. And let's take a look at the browser, and we have it right. So it looks like we have pretty much replicated what do we have inside the design. So let's try to work on the responsiveness part now. For the responsiveness part, I would like to start with adding mixins first. So I've already prepared some mixins that's pretty much handy. So I will bring that mixins right here. These are pretty much the SAS mixin that we'll be working with. And the breakpoint up is just, as it says, it's minimum width of the breakpoint size that we define, which can be small, medium, and large. So this breakpoint down is max width generally, which takes in the size, and which is small, medium, and large. And also I have added some of the sizes that we'll be dealing with: medium, large, and extra large, which are the standard sizes for the devices out there. And the converted pixels are also commented out if we need it for the reference. So with this, I'll just save it, and let's begin with looking at our responsive designs. So let's go back and choose the browser, and let's zoom a little bit. And as you can see here, we have a burger kind of thing on our left, and this is centered, but we don't have these links, so we'll fix that. And obviously we will gradually work on everything that's below it. So it's not pretty much of a vast difference, but we will further tweak it out. So for our responsiveness, let's also bring in the inspector. For now, I will just go to the size that we have here, which is 375. So I'll just start with 375 and start with our navbar right here. So for our navbar, we need the hamburger menu that we saw before. So let's add the hamburger menu kind of thing right here. So I'll bring on some images inside of our navbar left. We can paste in the span ID of open menu, because we'll be making the use of this particular ID inside of our JavaScript later on to add and remove classes, which should be simple, and it looks fine. So let's also style this a bit inside of our styles. Inside of navbar, we'll add some styles for that burger icon that we imported. Okay, so inside of our left right here, we do have a span. So inside of left, we can write span, and it would be display of none in default. And so when can we see the menu icon? So we can see the menu icon when we can see the breakpoint change This should be block. Okay, what this basically does is we have made the use of mixins that we created before, and which can be used for add, include, and then breakpoint down small. A small is defined inside of our mixin, which is small, medium, and large. You can also take a reference from mixin file there, and it basically says that just downwards when the screen size is less than the small, then we will just have a display of block. So it's basically that one, and we will also add height and width to our images. So inside of a span we have image, so we will add image. Let's save it and let's see it in the browser. As we can see here, we can see these icons being appended. It can be seen and it's hidden. So we will also fix the others, which this should be hidden. So which is Nepal left UL. So this can go off and this can also go off. And this should be basically it. So let's take a refresh and let's make a few changes here. So inside of our left we have to add a breakpoint, and let's add a breakpoint down small, and we want to display none to these UL that we see, display of none. And also we want to make the changes to our center right here. So for the image that's inside of center, we want to like align it vertically center, so make the use of margin auto for that one. And also we want the center element to be like growing 100% full width. So for that also we will just grab in the media queries needed, which basically tells us that justify to the center and display would be just one, and display flex. And obviously in our right we don't want this as well, so we'll just grab it from our UL and paste it right in the right UL. So let's save it. This should work, and it does work. Okay, awesome. So the only thing needed is a bit of tweak in our container classes, right? So let's make a change to our container class. So inside of our globals, we can go to container, and inside container we can tweak a bit things around here. So what I want to do for the container is, if it has crossed the less than the medium size, then we will have a padding of left and right, so that it'll be easy for us to like push things in the center, in a sense, pushing things from left and right with the padding. Let's see it and we do have a padding on left and right added, and we don't have here, and we have it here. Okay, looks great to me. So now let's add a few tweaks to our the typography right here. So we have 60 and the top, 60 on the top. So okay, I guess we can go to H1 and add a breakpoint right here and change the font size when we have the device sizes changed. So we will make the use of when we have when the breakpoint down is it's less than large, then we will change this H1 to font XLG, which was XXLG before. And let's also grab it and make the change to our H3 here, and font can go to from XLG to medium, and let's save it and let's format a bit, and let's see it in the browser. So it looks like, yeah, okay, it looks like we are in right track. and we what we got to do here is, if you have noticed that we have these lines which are not perfectly centering, and we can see just two lines here. So for that, we'll also add some minor fixes. I will grab on some media queries that I have prepared inside of lines here and just add it below here. This is for the lines. So basically it tells when the breakpoint is less than medium, which is downwards medium, it has this width, and it's downwards small, it has this width. Hopefully this will like temporarily solve this one. So we can see one line, two line, three line, and a bit of four lines, and which is probably fine for now. And it's what is inside design. We have the three lines, right? We don't have a fourth line, but um, anyway, this is kind of what we are thinking about right now. So this is okay. So let's work on these grid container parts right here, or we can just work on this menu first. Let's like add some scripts to add some styles and remove styles, and according to on-click event to this menu icon right here. Let's also add some overlay menu. After we click on this one, we will create a div which adds a class and removes a class, which will be a simple menu right there. So for that one, we will also need is to like uncomment the thing that we already created, which is overlay menu. It's basically a display of none in the desktop, and when it reaches to mobile, it display of initial or default. And we will have just a span tag with a close, and we will hook in some on-click handlers to this one, and we will have some allies over here. So for the overlay menu, we haven't created yet the styles for it. So we will go to overlay menu, or maybe globals, and inside here we can add overlay menu. Okay, so for the overlay menu, I want to grab some styles that I have already created, because I don't want to type in line by line. So I will just gradually go and describe it. First of all, it's display of none, and we are trying to have a transition between the display of none and display of block. When it has the class of so, it gives a display of block, and position would be absolute, and top would be 0, bottom would be 0, left would be 0, and z index of minus 1, and right is also 0. This can be moved to the top here, and then a background color of our template blue, and transition would be 0.5 easy. And basically that's it. We'll also add some scripts that's necessary. So I have already created a basic script that's needed, which is just this one. So basically it listens to Windows onload event, and we have our get element by ID, which is open menu and close menu and overlay menu. And we also have added the click handler for forms. We'll come after this later on. So it's basically adding the show class and removing the show class on click. So that's it. So let's hit a save, and let's see what do we have here. And looks great, but it is not like totally like spreading all across the entire body. But for that one, we can fix it like going to our globals, and inside of our body, we can add uh, uh, a media query there, so that when we have our display of small, then we want our body to be uh, relative, position relative, so that we have these overlay menu as position absolute on top of it. So if we hit a refresh, and we still don't have this, which can be I think this is pretty much okay for now. We will obviously debug it later on. So let's quickly move on to our feature section. So basically for our feature section right here, we just don't want to play around a lot. We do have a position absolute element of these works, which should be relative. I guess it can be like fixed up. It can be positioned with a bit of minus on the top as well. And for the part of cards here, we will just have a quick fix for like laying it out as a flexbox rather than grid in the mobile, so that it would be like stacked automatically for us. And let's add our works section fixes for responsiveness. So inside of our works, uh, we will add in some CSS fixes for responsiveness. Okay, got it. Instead of works.scss, we want our responsive fixes for the work section. And for the work section right here, I've written some media queries before. We basically want to like change our grids to flex. That would be a quick solution for now. And we will just add a media query which says if it's below the small devices gap of this, and display it flex, and flex wrap is wrap. Okay, so we also need a fix for our the headings, right? Because we don't want it to be like absolute element and left minus, right? So for that we will just add in a media query which says position absolute left of 0 top minus 3 rems and do not rotate. All right, so it looks good till now. Let's try to save this one and see it in the browser. What do we have? And looks like we are trying to achieve, which is great. I think we have these things. I think this button is really pushing up. So this can be fixed later on. So we have not totally aligned to the center because of this button, I guess, because it's tick on the right. Gradually this will be fixed, but for now we're pretty much in a decent place. So let's also tweak this about sections right here. So it's the same, like we don't want to like go to let's go to about first, and inside of our about heading we want to like do the same that as we did in previous section, which is not to rotate, and other fixes like left and top of this position absolute element. Okay, so inside of UL align we can add a bit of margin to our right, right here. So in the small devices below the small, the margin of right would be 2.44, and then we also need is a bit of breakpoints for our grids, right? And we don't really want to use grids, and a quick fix would be like uh, display flex and flex wrap. So if we save this one and see it, we do have that effect right here, which is great. We do have about here, we do have works here, which is pretty much that we are trying to achieve. But only thing is that works and about are not centered. We can obviously center it. Let's see why. Grid continuous, heading, absolute. Let's now focus on the links section that we have here. For the link section, it's just simple for now, which is just a list of links, which is stacked vertically. And we will just have a tweak to our links right here. Let's go to links, and obviously, first thing first, our heading, we should not rotate it and all stuff as we did before. And for the grids part, obviously, um, we want to take the span, and the padding left would be 0.5 rems for the span, and then in the breakpoint downwards of our shear link heading, which is inside of shear link, we can add in the breakpoint down of display flex and flex wrap, so that everything would be stacked vertically. Okay, now it's fine because I messed up with the nesting um, structures right here. It looks great. We are on track. The only thing is we are having a bit of trouble on our right with the big gaps there. It's because of this button. If this is fixed, then most of the things are fixed. Okay, so now moving on to the contact spot, we do want to reference our design, which is contact is stacked on the top, and we have the form here, and the form button is stacked on our bottom here. So let's try to replicate it. And moving on to the contact, we want to first start with the section contact right here, and we want to reduce its padding because it's like a little bit of reduced padding over here, which is around 61. So I'll just grab in the padding needed for here and paste it right here, which is 3.75 rem. And also we need to like specify the first child to width of 100% in the small devices, uh, right? Because the first child is this one. So this one, which needs to be sticked to the 100%. And for other parts, we can further move on to the like changing the flex direction of our grid container. So inside of our grid container, we can add a breakpoint of small down. It's below the small devices with a 100% and flex direction should be column. And further adding to that one, we lastly want to add for the styles to our contact overall class, which is this one. And let's add a gap of 0 rem, 0 rem, and just display flex and flex wrap, and margin bottom would be 3.75. If we hit a refresh, now it looks fine. So pretty much we have done with our contact as well. Let's go with our footer. So for our footer, we don't have much changes. I'll just go to footer, and inside of footer, inside of UL, we want to tweak a bit here. We want to wrap our flex below the small devices, and we do also want to include other breakpoints for our ULLI. So inside of ULLI, we'll add other breakpoint, which is this one, which is padding left of 0 and display block and margin top of this. Okay, and around 10 pixels of margin top, and all of it is aligned vertically, which is great. So we will just add the same, which is inside of our UL, which is this. We will add furthermore styles to that. Okay, great. So after adding further styles necessary, this looks pretty much okay for now. And let's format it, save it, and let's see everything inside the browser. Now, taking a look at what we have gone so far, it looks pretty decent for now. and we have made it totally responsive, and also we can recheck. It's pretty much similar that we have here inside Sketch Inspector, and let's try to see it in the desktop version, which is perfect, right? um, this is really great. Okay, let's try to resize it so that we can see the difference. Okay, we have what we have here is great. We don't have to tweak much, and inside here we don't have to tweak much either, and here we don't have to tweak much either, which is great. And inside here we have a lot of things going on, like changing grids to flex for our time saver, which is great, right? So I think we have a bit of problem there. Oh, okay, so this looks pretty decent for now. I'll add that fixture for the footer, which should be like stacked. Okay, anyway, uh, this looks pretty decent. Let's go ahead and implement the easiest way to implement Netlify form, serverless forms, which is provided by Netlify. So we'll implement it inside this form, and we'll obviously test it out, deploying this particular website to Netlify as well. So let's dive into adding Netlify form inside of our website. To add some basic implementation of Netlify form without the line of any JavaScript, we just can close everything that we have for now, styles, okay, and move to our contact us form right here. And I would like to bring on an article or a document of Netlify forms, so that we can understand how we can deal with Netlify forms. And here is the document. So inside here we can see the dead simple version of implementation of Netlify form without the line of JavaScript. So Netlify comes with the built-in form handling, and that's enabled by default, so which is great. And there's no need to make any API calls or extra line of JavaScript. But if you want to add in Ajax or JavaScript, you can also do it with submit JavaScript render form with Ajax. But for now, we'll just be implementing a dead simple way to work with Netlify forms, which is enabled by default. Okay, so what do we need to do? So first of all, go to our forms and add data Netlify true, or we can add a Netlify attribute. So we'll just add Netlify attribute inside of our form right here. And let me also recheck everything is okay. And also we definitely need a method type inside of our form, and we'll also add a method type, which is post, obviously. And other thing, taking a reference to this document, we have a name attribute which determines the call of the form. Netlify interface, so it must have a name attribute, so which says we have this name email and name, and these name attributes are needed. So we will just grab the name attributes that's relevant to us. So I will just add name right here, which is name, and for our email, which that would be name email, and for our text area, that would be name description. All right, so everything looks fine. We have this button which is type submit, which is programmatically clicked, but we don't see this in UI, right? So I guess we are pretty much okay for it. um, I mean, we don't see this particular form in UI. I mean, we don't see this particular button in UI, but we see this button. So the type submit button should be inside this form, as far as I have understood it. But anyway, let's go with this, and I think we are pretty much okay. And this is how we can implement the dead simple way of implementation of Netlify forms without even using a line of JavaScript. but you can use Ajax as well, and you can also take the reference to the Netlify documents inside forms. So yeah, this is it. Let's go with log into our Netlify account and deploy this particular website so that we can see the changes. But before that one, let me quickly push this website to my Git repository, and I will link that particular Git files inside of our Netlify right here. So let me quickly deploy this. Let me quickly push this inside of GitHub. So I have already pushed this file inside of GitHub. So let's select new Git file. So I'll go to my GitHub and authorize. And I have a bit of repo. So it's called deploy portfolio app. And I want to select this particular deploy portfolio app that I have inside of my GitHub. So I want to select this. And the branch that I want to deploy is responsiveness branch, and deploy the site. And we don't want any things written in that particular command because it's just static files for now. And here we have it. We have everything deployed, and voila, and here we have our site. Let's go inside of our forms and see. We don't have any recent form submissions. We can see here. Let's hit a refresh, and we don't have any recent form submissions, but we can also go to forms. No forms configured in this site. Okay, let me like quickly submit a form to this. I hope this works fine. uh, Let me quickly inspect it and then see everything is working fine. We do have but we can just add overflow y hidden during this menu when shows up, but this is pretty decent. Okay, so inside of our forms, let's quickly add our forms. Name can be anything, John Doe, and the email can be john@gmail.com, and then message can be I am using uh, dead simple netla net sorry dead simple Netlify form implementation. Okay, let's hit send. Looks like you have broken a link or entered a URL that doesn't exist. Alright, I'll check that. Let's see why don't we have the form submitted. I think we have missed out a line of right here which says we need uh, data Netlify true, and we can also add remove everything for now, and let's try to push everything that we have currently, and let's check whether the changes are being reflected or not. And if we go to our forms right here, we should see that change, which is a method post, and then we don't see responsiveness branch. Okay, let's test this out. Name, and then we have email is info@gmail.com, and message can be anything. Let's hit send, and bravo, we have the form submitted and back to our site. It takes back to our site, and the good thing is that it handles the success automatically, right? So and as you can see here, we can go to forms and we can see one form collecting data, right? So everything is working fine. We can just recheck it once again, so that the first form submitted is not really submitted, but I don't think it's really submitted. But if we submit it once again, which is John Doe coder, all right, coder John at gmail.com, and then this is simple Netlify form. All right, let's send it. Okay, thank you for your submission. It's a success message, And if we go back and reload here, we should see that right in here, which is great, which is John Doe Coder. This is simple Netlify form, name, email, and message attributes as well. So guys, in this video, we used semantic HTML, SAS preprocessor, and some JavaScript, and ultimately also made the use of Netlify forms to create and deploy our responsive portfolio website in Netlify. So thank you so much for watching my videos. If you guys want to learn more about design and development more, please like, share, and subscribe with a click down below. I'll be trying to make more better videos. See you in the next one.